talking, and it's lively and vibrant on this 27th, and I hate to break up all the conversation. We can start without you. That's one thing I found out. If I am not in this position, the city will go on without me. Yeah, right. All right, Madam Clerk, could you please read the roll?
Mr. Bozen?
Here.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Foyce?
Here.
Mr. Greider?
Here.
Mrs. Jewin?
Here.
All right, thank you. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? All right, thank you. The pledge this evening will be led by Brian Bowman. Brian, please.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I think there's a book that I read that said, "Be ye ready."
Okay, hold on. Because I have an amendment. Here we go. Motion to approve the agenda with the amendment that on the consent resolution, item 1A3, approving the request of Scott Hambley for a tax exemption on the construction of a home, that we delete that resolution, item 1A1.
Also, for the minutes.
And, approve the agenda as amended and the minutes of the January 21st, 2020 regular session as proposed.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
before we second that, I want to pull off the consent agenda to discuss.
We're not there yet.
We'll pull up the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just point of order, we're not there yet. So we're not at the consent agenda yet.
All right, so we have the agenda, amended agenda, and the minutes approved. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda and drama to come after. All right, I'd like to call up Julie Dawson. If you join me up front. Is the director of our housing authority. I have a special presentation to Julie Dawson in appreciation of 30 years of valuable and dedicated service to the city of Waterloo, Iowa, coming up here soon. So Julie, it's been a long ride, but tell us a little bit about it before I make some comments.
I was thinking about what I was going to say tonight, and I think the most interesting thing is when I first started, we only had 700 rental vouchers in the city of Waterloo, and now we have 1,075. So that's a big increase.
Yeah.
And then I was also thinking over the 30 years of working with clients directly and then now being the director, it's been sometimes frustrating, sometimes infuriating, but always very, very gratifying.
Great.
And we want to thank you for your dedication and your leadership as well to making sure that those that are most vulnerable in our community have a place to live. And, you know, that shows a lot because our jobs aren't necessarily about what we do, but it's also connected to our hearts. And your job is connected to your heart. So we want to say we thank you and we value you and we applaud you for your success over the time you've been here. Thank you. All right. Is Is there anyone that would like to make some oral comments this evening? We have some that asked to speak to particular items on the agenda, but if anyone would like to address the city council, please come forth to do so expediently so we can continue to move on. Yes, sir.
John Sherbin, 1715 Robin Road. We still got a little bit of a question mark about this, leasing this parking lot for parking for a bowling alley, because the fact that I think the real reason they're doing that is if you drive past, you'd like to check it out, what they're using it for is a place to park their snow. And I don't think that's totally legal. All the parking lots are pushed off and the way they are. I used to push a little snow, so I know somewhat about that. But with the salt, I don't know what they use for anything, but it seems like the real reason is they sold a lot to us so we can furnish them a place to park their snow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
Mayor, members of the council, Forrest Dillevue, 1725 Huntington Road. I spoke last week about a house that we're buying on 915 Linden. I had concerns about this house since community development had spent over $47,000 to help a couple that was living there have a place to live. Now we are buying it. And Operation Threshold also spent some time and money there. I wasn't able to get anything there because they lost all their records in a flood, which is neither here nor there. My concern today is the people who we fixed this house for are still living there. According to what I could find out, they are still habiting that house. I went by this weekend, there's lights on, porch light on. They've been going in and out of the house. And so now I have a concern about where these people will go if we buy the home that we've already spent $47,000 on to give them a home, and now we're gonna take the home from them. Are we going to pay to relocate them? Are we gonna buy them another house? Are they gonna move into another landlord's house where that one may need rehab and we may have to start over to let them have a decent place to live? I'd like to have some kind of report back. I know I don't expect it tonight, but I would like to have something back about that. Thank you kindly.
All right, thank you, sir. No, you got that?
David Dreyer, 3145 West 4th Street. My comments are on the warming center and runway 624. The warming center, we're in here tonight. I don't think this building is sprinkled. What's the difference in the hazard, whether there's a fire person sitting there all night long awake, or whether we have a fire in here and there's two exits, down the back stairs or down the front way? So what's the difference in the danger factor? But yet we're going to close down a warming center that gives some people a place to get shelter when it's damn cold. Excuse my French. Runway 624. I was a helicopter crew chief in the military, and no matter, everybody knows a helicopter goes straight up and straight down, not when it's windy. So when you change the attitude of the wind at the runway, and a big airplane is not affected as badly. I flew with a military pilot, very good pilot, and we came in one time because the runway was only one direction on a fixed wing aircraft, and he had to side slip the aircraft to get back in line with the runway because of the wind. I think we are hurting ourselves. Read an article in the paper about the aspect of we have two runways. A big aircraft is not affected as much as a small aircraft. They need that additional direction of landing to be able to safely navigate. We can find money, as one gentleman said last week, we can find money to do a whole lot of other things. But we can't find money to keep a viable 3-runway Air Parrot? Why not?
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'm so glad to see that Ragbri is coming to Waterloo. What a wonderful thing for Waterloo, for all of us. Also, I want to tell you a little bit about my week. I had the great fortune to have a conversation with one of our council people, and they agreed to second my motion, which is on the agenda for later. And I was so pleased about that because to me it showed collegiality. The only person up here who remains that was in opposition to ban the box is me. And so I knew that I would struggle to get a second, and I thought that this person stepped out of politics for a moment and did the right thing to allow us a chance to discuss it and for a chance for the public to discuss it. But I got a phone call yesterday, and they have withdrawn their agreement to second my motion. And my thing is this. That was very sad, and according to this person, it was because they had received a phone call from another councilman, and, I don't know how you want to word it, but it was, it was just a group discussion of those who did not vote for ban the box. So what I'm going to ask and appeal for right this moment is, I'm going to appeal to the better angels of my colleagues, and I hope that they will now reconsider. Don't be so afraid of you people. Don't be so afraid of your remarks. Don't be so afraid of me. And I would ask that one of them step forward in courage and second my motion. And then also, I do intend to pull off the consent agenda tonight because I've been really troubled about transparency lately, and I think it's time we have a chance to look at every item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, well, I do plan to respond to what the councilperson from Ward 1 has said. First of all, I don't know that anybody would forget common decency not being shown when Jonathan Ulrich was, in my mind, stripped of a job because of a vote by council at that time in which none of the four that had voted to strip him of that agreed to reconsider their vote, even though what it did was it lost him his job. I considered that totally indecent as far as what had happened to that individual, even after appeal from one of the council members to please do the right thing. It was met with silence. And secondly, the whole concept of snow removal downtown, I keep hearing people talk about that it's something that needs to be upgraded, it needs to be improved because especially around the meters, we've got snow piled where people can't get to the meters, and if you're a little bit older, there's even more of a problem there. So I would hope that could be addressed. And next is I would echo what one of the public had said about the warming center, as far as I hope that we can get an update on that, Mr. Mayor, as far as where we're at with that right now, because that is a concern that I have, and I think everybody else on the council has, Mr. Mayor. So,
All right. Well, first, with regards to the warming center, that didn't start here.
right.
So we've been out trying to take a look at different sites to see what we can do, and I'm optimistic within the next day or so that we'll have another site that's ready to go. So I'm optimistic about that. And just in regards to the transparency portion, and just to explain to the audience so that you won't be misguided about that conversation, the city has what they call a consent agenda that's offered. It's part of a state that allows us to put kind of, I won't say mundane, because everything is basically your business, but put items on this area. The city of Waterloo probably places less on here. So these are the items that are placed on here, and it's up to discretion to the council to pull them off. You know, for instance, we just had a finance committee meeting, which was done in the public, and the bill's payment for the finance committee, which was read earlier, is on the consent agenda. Pulling that off is just doing what we've already done. So I don't want to give anyone, because a council member is upset because they didn't get a second from another council member, that the city is
I
not being
object.
that the city is not being transparent. So just to let the rest of the citizens know, that is what our consent agenda is all about. Now, that's the end of oral presentations.
Move to close the hearing, receive comments, and place on file.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay, make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition to 1A1, the bill amounts in the amount of $1,559,910.28. Move to approve that with that addition, receive, approve, and place on file.
Second.
That motion has been made with a second.
Mr. Mayor.
Just to clarify, Mrs. Klein, if I understood you correct, you were asking to take all of the items off the consent agenda,
Except for number one,
except for number
since we
one.
went through it so thoroughly.
Okay. So then, if we vote on that, we would then have to vote on all the individual items on the consent agenda.
Individually?
You can do them as a group or however you see fit.
How do you see fit, Ms. Klein? You're
I don't mind the protocol as long as there's a chance to talk about them.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Morrissey.
So I'm just wondering every last one, 1A, 1 through 1B, 3 is taken off the consent agenda? Okay.
All right. Which items you want to discuss?
Should we begin at the beginning, or are we going to cluster them as Kelly suggested?
We want, you asked to have these all removed, so please tell us which ones you want to discuss.
Just to clarify, did we get a second on the bills payment? Because that was read, and according to Mrs. Klein's
I
request.
seconded it, Kelly.
Okay, so then after we vote on the bills payment, then we'd have to vote on the rest of the items.
How would you like to proceed?
Let's do one at a time then.
You have to read all of them.
That's fine.
We have to vote on the bills payment
Number 2 is a
first.
resolution of,
Well, first, all in favor of the bills payment,
We got to do that by roll call.
roll call vote.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
All right. Does everyone in the audience have a copy of all of the, everyone know what number 2 and number 3 is?
On the agenda.
So it's not being hidden from you, right? This is right here. Okay. Just so we can make sure everyone has a copy of it. Mrs. Klein?
Yes, number 2 is a resolution approving the request of Brian and Brenda Holman for tax exemptions on the construction of a new single-family home valued at $240,000 for property located at 711 Short Street and located in the Consolidated Urban Revitalization Area, or CURA.
Mr. Mayor,
That motion's been made with the second. Yes, sir.
I move to call the question.
Well, she has a question about number 2. So calling the question, we can only call the question on the item that has been read, correct? So number 2 was read.
Right, and once the question is called, you have to put the question.
Yep. So number 2, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's roll call and resolution.
Oh, roll call vote, I'm sorry.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Number 3, would you like me to go for number 3?
Number 3 has already been removed.
Oh, that's right. Number 4, apologize for that. Number 4 is a resolution approving the request of Sean Hoosman for tax exemptions on the construction of a garage and home improvements valued at $30,000 for property located at 333 Wendell Court and located in the Consolidated Urban Revitalization Area.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, roll call vote.
Mr. Morrissey?
Did someone
Yes.
call the question?
I don't know.
Mrs. Klein?
I
No one
don't-
called, no one called the question.
Okay, so I was
You have a question about it?
discussion. I just think I'd like an overview on this to see if the audience would like more, maybe a presentation on the taxes, the value of the tax exemptions and how big the house and garage are going to be. And
This isn't oral presentations. This is council voting on it.
so there's no answer to that?
Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Number 5 is a resolution approving the request of Ron Knutsvig for tax exemptions on the construction of a single-family home valued at $650,000 for property located at 4847 Shelly Court and located in the city limits urban revitalization area or the CLURA.
That motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Number 6 is a resolution approving the request of Ian Crowther Green for tax exemptions on the construction of a single-family home valued at $303,675 for property located at 1306 Partridge Lane and located in the city limits urban revitalization area or the CLURA.
Second.
That motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey? Mrs. Klein?
Yes. Number 7 is a resolution approving preliminary plans, specifications, form of contract, etc., setting a date of bid opening as February 13th, 2020, and date of public hearing as February 17th, 2020, for the fiscal year 2020, Lot 2, Brock 3rd Edition Sanitary Sewer Extension, contract number 986, and instructing the city clerk to publish said notice.
Second.
That motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
This-
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, this and the next one, I was going to ask to have removed separately,
It's
And-
already removed.
but I was just saying, I was going to do that myself. Okay, and the reason for that being, the question I have with number 7, and I'll get to it in number 8 as well, is it says we're approving preliminary plan specification form of contract, and then we're setting the date of the bid opening with bids. And so there's 2 parts to this, is my understanding, or really 3 parts of it. There's the approval, a preliminary plan, specification, form of contract, et cetera. And then there's the setting the date of the bid opening and the hearing being the 3rd part of it for this. And my problem with doing anything about this, as well as the next one, is there's no attachment. We were not given what the preliminary plans are, Mr. Mayor, to look at, to approve. And how can we approve something when we don't have anything to look at to approve? And so with number 7, I would ask that number 7, that resolution be postponed for 1 week until we can get preliminary plans and that part of that. I don't have any problem unless there's a date issue with February 13th and 17th of keeping those in there, Mr. Mayor, but the other part I can't approve. I don't feel I can vote on because I don't have anything to vote on.
What's going on?
Jamie Knutson, city engineer. Historically, this has been the way these have been put on council for the last 25 years that I've been here, putting these projects on council. Just so you understand, the plans for this one are about 30 pages and the spec book's a couple hundred pages. The next item, University Avenue, is, the plans are about 2.5 inches thick. The spec book's the same. If council wants copies, we're more than happy to provide those. Council has always in the past trusted staff to provide these things to council. And if you certainly want them uploaded to Novus, we can work on that, but these are very large attachments that, quite frankly, they're gonna take up a lot of space, and they're big attachments to look through.
So Jamie, so after we get the bid opening and the public hearing, that comes back to the council, right?
Yes.
And how will they know at that point? Do you provide graphics, like with university? What do you do?
Well, as far as the bid opening, we'll have a public bid opening, and Kelly will read the bids. The plans and specs are available in our office. If council wants to stop by and look at them, they're certainly available. We have them. The issue is, when we put these things on council, when we ask you to set the date of hearing and all of these dates, those have already been printed in the plans. We would need to go back and reprint and pay for new printings of the spec books to make everything match if you're gonna delay things for a week. So there's gonna be an additional cost to the city for doing this.
I just think he wants to know. I mean, like, why is it like that? So he just wanted an explanation
I mean,
of
if,
why it's been done like that.
I can't tell you, like I said, it's been this way for as long as I have.
So you have the spec books, he can come take a look at?
Yeah,
any
the
of
plans and
council
specs are
members?
always available in our department. We just don't necessarily or never have put them up on Novus. And you go back further, before we even had Novus, making 7 copies of plans that are 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches thick for each council member was a lot of extra work, so.
Mr. Mayor.
I mean, if council wants to review them, we'll put them up on, we'll start putting them
Well,
up on Novus,
Well, I
but
think Noel just indicated, you can send them a map to see exactly.
but that's not what Mr. Morrissey, I don't believe that's what Mr. Morrissey's looking for.
No. Mr.
Can
Mayor.
you give him a spec book?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not asking for 40,000 pages of information. I'm asking for what those preliminary plans are, because this is really divided into 3 parts that we are voting on. We're not voting, I could ask, I think, parliamentary-wise for a separation of 3 things within that, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying, I'm including number 7 in this because number 8 is what I'm getting at. Because number 8, to me, it's wrong for something as serious as Phase 3 to not include the preliminary plans in there, because if we approve those, if we approve is it, Ms. Councilperson from Ward 1, can I include number 8 as part of this discussion?
Of course you may.
Okay, that if we include, if we are voting on the approval of the preliminary plans, and that's part of this vote, but we're looking at, the dates there for the bids and that, I feel that, I know I'm not gonna get the bids because the bids aren't there yet, okay? But for certain, the plans are there, the preliminary plans, and I'm speaking specifically for University Avenue, because I think we've already dealt with the Brock edition before. It's come up in the context of other votes, hasn't it, Jamie?
Yes, this will be the second project out there, yes.
Correct, and so we've seen that before, but in all fairness to number 8, number 7 doesn't have an attachment.
And my concern is that we don't have an attachment on either 7 or 8 when there should have been something at least explaining the basics of what the preliminary plans are. So what I'm just asking for, and if you want to forget about me asking for an attachment to number 7, I would ask that number 8, the approval of the preliminary plans, et cetera, be postponed until we have an attachment that specifies what the preliminary plans are that we're approving tonight, because I, for one, don't agree with those preliminary plans. And I want to see them and see what phase 3, because we've already dealt with phase 2, we've already dealt with phase 1. I want to see what phase 3 is, and I want to be able to vote on that, rather than voting on it in a consent agenda tonight. So I make a motion, well, I can't, we're on number 7, but that's my explanation, Mr. Mayor.
After we'll go to Kelly, then we'll come to Mrs. Jewin. Hold on one
Mr.
second. Hold on one
Morrissey.
second. She may have some.
Pardon?
So just a note on why the resolution says approving the preliminary plans, sorry, I can't speak, specifications, et cetera, and setting the date of public hearing, is because we do need council to authorize that they're okay with the plans and specs before we set the hearing date. So really, they need to be together so that the plans are okay, so that when, after this meeting, we go to put together our public hearing notice, we can note that the date is correct, that the plans are on file, et cetera. And I think if there's concerns about not having the plans attached in Novus, as Jamie said, these plan books for a lot of these projects are gigantic. Our office can't even scan them because we're not capable of scanning them to you. What we could do in the future to be helpful is we could maybe put a note in Novus stating that the plans are on file in either the city clerk's office or the city engineer's office.
Well, I mean, we're talking about number 7. I know we got to vote on number 7 first, but I'm bringing number 7 up because there's not an attachment, just like there isn't on number 8. My main concern is number 8. I know I've already voted on number 7 before and approved it before, so I will remove my objection to number 7, wait for number 8 to come up.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call vote for number 7.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Beg your pardon.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
All right, number 8.
Number 8 is resolution approving preliminary plans, specifications, form of contract, et cetera, and setting date of bid opening as February 27th, 2020, and date of public hearing as March 2nd, 2020, for the fiscal year 2020 University Avenue reconstruction, Phase 3 from Evergreen Avenue to Highway 63, contract number 971, and instruct city clerk to publish said notice.
Second.
All right, that motion's been made with second. We're going to start with Mrs. Jewin first.
Let me just state, and this applies to 7 and 8, I understand just the sheer mass of these plans and specifications preclude sending them to us. What I'm wondering is a compromise area is they're already, and Kelly alluded to this, if they're already on display and available for review at the city clerk's and the engineer's office, and we're gonna have time between today's vote and the vote that we'd be taking after the hearings, is it acceptable that, no, it's not acceptable.
And I can
Why
explain
is
why,
not,
but
okay, why is it not acceptable that we can be encouraged and invited to go in and view those plans in one of those 2 locations?
Because if we vote yes on this tonight, we're approving the plans. Period. And
But-
I'm not.
But we're coming back at the public hearing on the 2nd, and we would have another opportunity at that time to
Not to-
turn them down.
No, we wouldn't. That is the bids. Those are the
But if we
presentation of
turn
the
them
bids.
down, you're still saying that we're tied into the plans?
Well, we've already, we'd have to rescind our vote from tonight to where we're approving the preliminary plans. I know that the preliminary plans that are being submitted are different than what the plans were for Phase 3 that we're supposedly have voted on before, because there's other things included in that that weren't included when we voted before. So I want to see, there should have been an attachment with number 8. This is a very serious issue because it's reconstruction of University Avenue and includes the whole concept of moving either 4 lanes or 2 lanes. Within that, it includes, some people are saying the miles per hour, but I know that we can discuss that, but the curbing in that, if there's not an attachment there, to me, it's sort of like if we were in Congress and we were presented with a bill, but we never saw the bill in front of us. I mean, that would be tantamount to me voting on something that I haven't really taken a good look at. And
Mr. Mayor?
the public could say,
You asked a
where's the
question.
bill?
Yeah. I just, and with apologies that I was not physically here at last week's meeting. We had this on a work session. At that time, did we not, as a group, kind of give our verbal consensus, not through a vote, but just the consensus of those in the room, that we did agree with the plans as presented?
Ms. Jewett, my understanding in a work session, the vote or the motion is to move it to full council. It doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with what is been said there.
But I thought
We're not
we
taking
gave
a
the-
vote on it because we
gave
can't
it-
take a vote
There
on it.
was,
Yeah,
there was,
agree.
there was some conversation to move what was presented last week forward.
That's what I thought.
We've had, 1 or 2 work sessions about it. The conversation was potentially 45, then we'll do a review. The conversation was about having a roundabout. The conversation was building the road at 45 miles per hour. So, I mean,
4 lanes.
and
I
4
believe, you mean.
lanes. Mrs. Klein?
My opinion on this matter, number one, I appreciate the lively conversation, and it shows you why it's good to take these off the consent agenda. My opinion is, we have a real obligation to do due diligence. And we all looked, at least I hope we all did, we looked at our agenda when it immediately came out. And when I have questions, I write them down and I seek the answers before, I try to before the meeting. So I don't think we can fault not having that here, because an opportunity did exist for my colleague from Ward 3 to go in and look at these things prior to this meeting, and so I'd like to call the question.
Well, no, we just voted on 7. We're voting on 8. So it's calling the question. We had,
Have a roll call to call the question? Kelly, don't you have to have a vote to call the question?
I'll read what our code says about calling the question.
Mr. Mayor, I had made a motion to postpone this for 1 week.
I didn't hear a motion.
Did make the motion.
was there, you said he did?
He did make that motion. I don't have a
Was
second.
there a second?
Checking the code?
Is there a second to postpone it?
Second.
All right, there's a motion to postpone it, not understanding the impacts this is
Postpone to what
going
week?
to
Postpone
have
for-
on us. Yeah,
What is the impact? Tell us that.
other than laughing stock, I don't know.
Maybe.
We've been
Mr.
talking
Knudsen.
about University Avenue, and they made PowerPoint presentations. This is sort of embarrassing. Yes, sir.
Jamie Knudsen, city engineer. Right now, it's a really good time to bid things, so every week that we wait, we're that much closer. Contractors are filling up their schedule. That being said, we will incur some more costs for redoing our plans or our specs, just so council is aware of that. I would really urge council to go ahead and move this, vote on it tonight, and please go ahead and move this and let us get this thing out to bid. We need to get this. We've had numerous council work sessions on it. Nothing's changed since we've had those over the last few months. It's always looked at 4 lanes and the speed limit. But there are consequences and there are extra costs that we will incur if council postpones this for another week. So
All right, so we have a motion to postpone it. Roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, you voted to postpone it. Are you withdrawing it?
No, I made the
Then-
motion to postpone. It was seconded. I thought we could have some discussion. Okay, and the reason for postponing it is I would like each one on the council to look inside themselves and see if they know what those preliminary plans are.
Like what? Like whether it's gonna be a 4-lane or a 6-lane? What do you want them to know?
If they know what the preliminary plans are, what they're voting on to approve,
Do you want them
what
to
it
know?
includes.
Know the amount of grade of cement, or what do you want them to know? Do you
If
wanna
they,
know if it's
if
a
they choose
roundabout
to
in
want
it?
to know that, I want to know what I'm voting on here as opposed to what I had supposedly voted on months ago that has changed, and I know it's changed since then. So all I'm asking for, if there's a summary of what was before and what there is now as far as the plans, and there should have been an attachment, and I hope that this will serve, that from here on, there'll be some kind of attachment that at least summarizes what the plans are, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Knudsen.
I'm Jamie Knudsen, city engineer. I believe that we had emailed council the council work session that we had 2 weeks ago, the documents from that. The enhancement stuff, again, nothing's changed from what's been presented in the past.
All right, there's a motion to postpone. Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Jewin,
No.
Mr. Bozen,
No.
Mr. Amos,
No.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mrs. Klein,
No.
Mr. Foyce.
No.
Mr. Greider.
No.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bozen,
Yes.
Mr. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey.
No.
Mrs. Klein,
Yes.
Mr. Foyce.
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Number 9 is a resolution approving requests to seek proposals for digital signage system design, upgrade, and installation for the Waterloo Public Library. Go Waterloo Public Library.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made with the second, council. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mrs. Klein,
Yes.
Mr. Foyce.
Yes.
Mr. Greider,
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin,
Yes.
Mr. Bozen.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Travel requests, Todd Darafield, City Forester, class meeting, Iowa State University Shade Tree Short Course, destination Ames, Iowa, February 26th through the 27th, 2020, amount not to exceed $288. Do I do them all together, Kelly, or?
Can we get a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Voice vote motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Todd can go to a training.
B, Officers Eilers, Northup, and Woodward, class meeting physical surveillance school, destination Des Moines, Iowa, March 9th through the 13th, 2020, amount not to exceed $400.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. Any conversation from council about physical surveillance school? Madam Clerk?
Mr.
All in
Morrissey.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
The next is Sergeant Holscher, class meeting, open sight rifle instructor recertification, destination Des Moines, Iowa, dates November 13th, 2019, I'm sorry, amount not to exceed $175.
Second.
A motion has been made with the second. Any conversation about Sergeant Hosher getting necessary and needed recertification?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Then the liquor licenses. The first is Amalgamated Local 838 UAW 2615 Washington Street, Class C liquor with outdoor service. Renewal application does not include Sunday, expiration date 2/29/2020.
Second.
The motion's been made with the second. Outdoor liquor license. Is there any comments about this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And the next is New Star Fletcher, 315 Fletcher Avenue, Class B wine, C beer, E liquor. New application includes Sunday, expiration date 1/29/2021.
Second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
does this have anything to do with their signage? Is this gonna affect their signage? Because I know they're in violation.
Yeah.
Has, Kelly, do you,
The rules for the liquor license would be separate from the rules for the sign.
okay, okay.
But
Yes,
they
ma'am.
follow up. Will you be following up with that, though? Because as Mr. Morrissey said, they were out of compliance by having that sign up.
Are they still out of compliance? Don't you need good character as part of these?
Noel Anderson, Community Planning Development Director. I'll have to check to see, at one point, they had a sign that was not allowed under the limited use alcohol zoning ordinance provision, so we'll have to check into that.
Do a follow-up on that. Good.
And Mr. Mayor, no, that doesn't change their limit, this doesn't change their limited use so that that sign has to change?
This doesn't affect the item on the agenda tonight, no. They can still have the liquor license.
Yeah, they can have a liquor license, but as far as their signage, they're still limited use.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, anyone else about a liquor license on New Star Fletcher, 315 Fletcher Avenue? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Then we have appointments. Mr. Brad Condon, Board Commission, Board of Adjustment. Expiration date February 2nd, 2025, and it's a reappointment.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made and the second. Board of Adjustment, Brad Condon. Brad, are you out there? You're not out there? Any questions on Brad's appointment? Madam Clerk, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, Brad, if you're out there looking, congratulations on your reappointment. Number 2, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Amos.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and file
No, I'm
proof of
ready.
publication and notice of public hearing. And it is for a wastewater treatment plant biosolids modification contract number 994.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question about this particular item on the agenda? Going a second time.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
The hearing has been closed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the hearing's closed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion adopting a resolution confirming approval of specifications, bid documents, et cetera.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. I know we've had presentations previously about us moving forward in this area. Highly important to the overall operations of our plant. But council, what questions do you have about biosolids?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion adopting.
Nope.
Gotta vote.
Hold on one second.
Gotta vote. Gotcha.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yeah.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Now, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion adopting a resolution authorizing to proceed.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Council, questions? Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
What was that?
Sorry.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file and instruct city clerk to read bids and refer to the treatment operations supervisor for further review.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Our estimate for the base bid was 16 million, I can't count my commas. 16,275,000. Alt 1 for the outdoor land out was $200,000. Alt 2 for the chemical building was $1,020,000. Alt 3 for primary sludge estimate was $360,000. Alternate 4 for the boilers was $305,000. Our first bidder was WRH Incorporated of Amana, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their base bid was $18,200,000. Alternate 1, $132,000. Alternate 2, $990,000. Alternate 3, $518,000. Alternate 4, $296,000. Second bidder was Woodruff Construction LLC of Waterloo, Iowa. They provided 5% security. Their base bid was $16,587,300. Alternate 1 was $199,000. Alternate 2, $184,000. Alternate 3, $374,000. And alternate 4, $266,000. Our third and final bidder was William Brothers Construction Incorporated of Peoria, Illinois. They provided 5% security. Their base bid was $18,150,000. Alternate 1 was $100,000. Alternate 2, $740,000. Alternate 3, $640,000. And finally, alternate 4, $260,000.
All right, thank you. Could someone take number 3 for us?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion adopting resolution approving an amendment to the City of Waterloo policy regarding residency of critical municipal employees and city department heads by removing firefighters, Waterloo Fire Rescue Medical Supervisors, and Regional Training Center Coordinator from the policy.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Anyone from the audience like to comment?
Forrest, excuse me, Forrest Dillawoo, 1725 Huntington Road. I'm very concerned about this change, extremely concerned. When you talk about firefighters, I have seen a case in my neighborhood where we had every Waterloo firefighter that we had out on the street in my neighborhood trying to battle a barn fire. And if we're gonna let them move to Cedar Rapids, Marshalltown, or wherever they might want to move, if we have everyone out, maybe we better get an agreement with Hudson who can help us take care of these fires. We hire these people, they should be here, they are critical. The word critical is in here. They are critical people, and that's why we need them close to us and able to help. It's not gonna do much good if they live 30, 50 miles away. I really think you need to turn this down. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this particular item?
David Dryer, 3145 West 4th Street. I guess my major question is, are they no more proud of the job they do in the city that they should live in than to, when the ship sinks, the rats run away? Thank you.
I wouldn't refer to our firefighters as rats, and so I take objection with you making that correlation. If you do it again, you'll be escorted out. Is there anyone else that would like to comment? I would. Public.
Just let
All right, thank you, public. Council, Mrs. Jewin.
Yeah, I have a couple questions of Fire Chief Treelor. First, how many times have we had an opening for a firefighter that we've not been able to fill that because we're not getting enough of the top tier qualified applicants that you'd like? And second, how many times have we had to call in all of our fire personnel to address a fire?
Pat Treelor, Fire Chief. If I'm understanding your first question, if we have a certified list, generally speaking, we may have anywhere from 25 to 30 individuals on it. We have exhausted lists in the past where we haven't hired off of for a number of different reasons, whether the qualifications, background checks, that sort of thing. So I don't know if I've answered your question there or not, but
Most of the time, you're able to find a qualified applicant even with the current residency requirements.
most of the time, I would say we have a certified list with a number of individuals on it. We would like to see a certain type of employee on there, prospective employee with the required certifications that would help us as a department for them to come on with without us having to send them to school or to train them.
Okay.
Sorry, what was your second question?
How many times have we had to call people in that are off duty, they're at home? How many times have we had to call them in for an emergency?
Well, in the 20-plus years I've been here, I've never been called back in an emergency type of situation as a firefighter. Of course, I have as the chief, We have individuals on the department, one of our battalion chiefs been on 32 years. He's been called back once, and that was the Warehouser fire in the 90s.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Mr. Treeler. Actually, two questions. One, is this comparable or smaller than what our sister cities have done? And if there are other cities in Iowa that have this 60-mile or greater policy, have they all burned down since adopting that policy?
Well, some of the communities that were listed in your council communication, Urbandale, Cedar Falls, for example, they do not have a residency requirement whatsoever for police or fire. Des Moines area, the city of Des Moines, Council Bluffs, there's 60 miles. The city of Cedar Rapids that we directly compete with for qualified individuals that want to seek a career in the fire service, their residency policy is at 50 miles. And I think they're just like us. They've got a great fire department. They don't have an issue with losing many buildings because of fire.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'm in support of this policy. I truly believe that it will help with recruitment, especially firefighter paramedics. We've got a letter from the Civil Service Commission endorsing this policy. 28 years, when I was on the fire service, I got called in once, and it was for Warehouser, and in the 90s, and it wasn't an emergency to get there. It was just, they just needed people to show up sooner or later and man hose lines because we'd lost that building. I have a real problem. When I first got hired, it was 30 minutes or 30 miles, whichever was you could fit it into. Then it reduced down to 20 miles, then it reduced down to 10 miles. And it's not 10 miles from corporate city limits, it's 10 miles from City Hall. And when you do that, just getting out to my house, out in the flower streets, you eat up 7 of those 10 miles. So it's extremely restrictive. I don't believe that by adopting this policy that current fire department employees that are living in the city of Waterloo are gonna move out of Waterloo a distance away. They're living in Waterloo because they're happy. They're living in Waterloo in the services they get in Waterloo. So I'm in support of this policy 100%.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Here's my thinking on it. I prefer that the people who protect us and serve us, I prefer that they are our neighbors. I love my neighborhood because I see police cars parked. 3. I think there's 3 now in my neighborhood. And my neighborhood loves that. And as I was door knocking this weekend, someone mentioned a fireman living on their corner, and they were so proud of that. I don't disagree with this for anything that was said here. It's just that. It's that we are building a community, not a community with caretakers who come in from far away. And I do have to kind of disagree with my colleague, Mr. Boson, because when I was out door knocking in the Audubon area, I came across a fireman who was out in his garage, and he said if there were more laxity in the residency requirements, he'd be gone from Waterloo. And I said, why? And he said, because the taxes are too, and then he used a swear word, high. So I don't support this, but it's for reasons of community.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, we have to wait till everyone has the opportunity to speak, then I'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Chief Treeler, how many critical employees total would there be that this would cover? Would it cover everybody other than you?
Within the fire department,
Yes.
it would exclude all the members except for myself, correct?
Okay. And this only applies to the fire department?
Correct.
Okay, and is there a belief that this policy could be used by other departments in a similar fashion?
Yes.
Well, I'll say that the amendment before you is only for what's listed, and that's basically the fire department. If you're asking me will there other departments follow suit afterwards, I would say there's a very good possibility that they may look to amend the current policy to one that fits their needs. I'm not speaking for any other department head here tonight, but I have spoke to many other departments that are inclined to want to increase the residency requirement, maybe not to the 60 miles. So the approach is one, just, we're saying as a fire department, we're comfortable at the 60-mile radius. Keep in mind, we're a little unique. Most of our members work a 24-hour shift and 48 hours off. So they work every third day. So there may be that applicant, that woman, that minority, that perfectly certified individual that lives outside of, say, 45 miles. They may want to come work here for the city of Waterloo. I think it's one thing to keep in mind is that when we had the policy, it said at 30 miles back in the 90s, say like when I was hired, I chose to move to Waterloo. I bought a house in Waterloo, and I'm still in that house today. So I don't think we can just assume if we set it out farther that our new hires are still not going to want to live in the city of Waterloo. And we're going to encourage them to, which we do right now, even at the 10-mile radius. That we start off every meeting the same way. We want you to live in the city of Waterloo.
And Chief Treelor, in reading this over the proposed policy change, it does not include any mile limit. There's no 60-mile on it. I take it that you're suggesting it just be open-ended and the decision be made at the discretion of the hiring personnel?
Well, what was indicated in your council communication is we would like to be removed from the policy. We're publicly stating that we'll set a departmental policy of 60 miles from city limits. We'll do so in our rules and regulations, and we'll do so in the civil service job description and job posting if you were to approve this.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, Chief Treelor, Waterloo has a fire department second to none. And I firmly believe that any decision, any kind of policy that is being promoted by you, and I'm sure by the other administrative staff or managerial staff that you have, has been thought over and considered very thoroughly, and the safety of Waterlooans is paramount in your mind. I trust you, and if this is something that you believe will work, I know that I have something that I would like to talk about, and that's incentivizing all new hires to live within Waterloo, but I know that's not part of what you're talking about. But I fully support this because I trust you, Chief Treelor. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Amos.
Councilman Morrissey said it a little bit more eloquently than what I'm able to say it, but I'm a firm believer in our department heads are here because they are individuals who are trustworthy, who know what's best for our city. And there's so many other things that I could say, but I'm not. But for me, I'm going to support this motion simply because I feel like our department head is telling us that this is something that's needed. So for me, I don't have any reason not to support it.
Has everyone that had an opportunity to speak that wanted to?
I don't need time.
Yes, sir.
Just really quickly, Chief. So I worked in Cedar Rapids for 16 years and only lived within 10 miles for about 3 of those years. So I understand, we have to be more cognizant of times have changed. We have people who have spouses that work, in between. I've witnessed some, you watch some growth in some areas in the corridor and in the Cedar Valley. We have to make sure that we're keeping up with that. We want to attract the best, and sometimes that means the best are a little bit farther away, and then they start to choose to move. That's what I did. I think you'd find there are a lot of people had, lots of conversations with firefighters who aren't planning on moving out of Waterloo. They enjoy living where they're at. They speak highly of it, and I think, there are individual reasons why somebody may do that, but I think overall giving our firefighters an opportunity and our fire department an opportunity is a good thing.
Chief, based upon what Mr. Foyce just said, so we can take an assessment to figure out how many currently live in Waterloo?
Firefighters,
Yeah.
somewhere in the range of 43 to 45, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Mrs. Klein?
I just wanted to say, I feel I need to rebut that just a little bit because 60% of our current firefighters don't live in town now. 60% was the number you gave me at the outset.
What are you rebutting?
Well, 60%, I said, how many people live in Waterloo? And you said 60% don't right now. Is that right?
I don't know. I don't think I ever said that. I think there's
It's roughly.
right around
roughly 40.
43 to 45 are members that live in the city of Waterloo.
Yeah, I thought,
of how many?
when I was taking that poll at budget time last year, your department was the highest of those willing, didn't want to live here. And here's my thing, I just think that we'll see flight. It's fine, you're gonna vote this in, I know you are, but I think we are going to see flight from our city, and that makes me feel kind of bad.
Well, so we heard comments and double comments from someone. What I just asked council, after you approve this, please make sure you leave staff here to be able to deal with critical needs because, not just this department, there are other departments that are dealing with critical needs. So when something comes up, God forbid it ever does, that we actually have some staff within a 10, 15-minute drive away from the city. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to commend you because you're the boss of the city, and I'm sure that you are going to make sure that your critical employees are here to support you in those times that are necessary. So thank you.
These are critical employees too.
They are.
So
But
it's council's decision over who stays
Right.
or who has to be here. So I want to put the onus back on you, Councilman Morrissey, our veteran counselor, to make sure you keep critical employees here so that the mayor could help get them to where they need to be. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Right. Could
Mr.
someone-
Mayor? Can I give you just a quick update on the warming center?
Sure.
Just wanted to let you know that we've been in the building, the projected Hawkeye Community College Metro Center, and it's looking favorable, and we've also had further discussions with the coalition that's working with the warming shelter.
I wanted it to be a surprise for tomorrow. He asked me
I'm sorry.
earlier.
I'm just
and I
giving an
had to
update
give
a little
him.
bit.
All right. Number 4.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion for a resolution approving and accepting a sanitary sewer easement agreement in the amount of $25,000 with JARF LC for the fiscal year 2020 Lot 2 Brock 3rd Edition Sanitary Sewer Extension Contract Number 986 located at 1369 through 1425 Martin Road, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Questions? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
All right. Number 5,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
I'd
Morrissey.
like to make a motion adopting resolution approving supplemental agreement number 2 with Amet Design in an amount not to exceed $50,543.30 for construction review services in conjunction with pavement widening of Amesboro Avenue from Blackhawk Road north 0.1 miles to Downing Avenue, DOT project number STP-A-8155, parentheses 757, parentheses --86-07, and authorize the mayor to execute said document.
Second.
Anyone? Questions on this item?
Down Sheriff 1415 Downing Avenue. Does this have anything to do with the piece of ground starting at the Phillips 66 station of Blackhawk Road and going up through the old car lot at the corner of Downing and Amesboro?
Sandy?
Sandy Greco, excuse me, Traffic Operations Director. Yes, it does. It's part of the project. All that has been taken care of. We've had a contract and agreement with the property owners, and hoping that it's a DOT project. It goes out for bid in March, and hopefully the project will start April or May.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Council, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey? Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Number 6.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Oh, all right. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving declaring a climate crisis and requesting immediate and accelerated action to address the climate crisis and keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made with the second. We have someone that asked to speak. It's Cheryl Christensen, if you would please come up.
Cheryl Christensen, 1702 East Mitchell. I handed out this to each of you, or at least it's in the mailboxes, on climate change. The article that was in the paper from our newest councilman on Friday night is wanting a resolution to make some changes for the reduction of carbon emissions by 2030 and 0 by 2050. In this article, it says this was a hoax. That's not a true. So in your article, I'm reading either it was from Greta Thurman, it's from AOC, or wherever you're getting your information from, it's not correct. And as a councilman in my area, I'm a little disappointed that this was in the paper and that this is coming out for this city. So I'm asking that you reconsider. I don't know when you plan to do this resolution, but I want you to cancel it and do some more research on this global warming issue. I also have a quote in the paper from Trump from last Wednesday night at the conference that they had, or whatever, in Switzerland. And his comment was, "The world must reject the perennial prophets of doom and their predictions of apocalypse." Now, if you're considering climate change, then maybe you need to check into the HARP issue that is in Homer, Alaska, because that is two areas where they have huge magnetic forces, both there and in Europe, that are causing some of these things that are changing our weather patterns. So I suggest that if you need more information, then maybe you better start looking into the HARP situation.
All right, thank you.
John Sherman, 1715 Robin Road. Although this is quite a debatable issue whether we've got climate warming or not, we do have a severe shortage of money. We do not have the manpower, I don't believe, to instigate a recommendation like this. It's controlled already by federal law and state law, what our emission standards are. As far as us going in and telling, for instance, John Deere's or any of the other manufacturers, what Tyson's, some of the others, what their emission levels are, we do have some limitations. But I don't think that we have the control to have the lawsuits that we'll probably have, same as ban the box. This is controlled already by state and federal law. We have no proof of what the temperature's going up and down. But the cost of regulations will, if it takes one guy, one car, one department, whatever, it's over $100,000. For what reason? We can't pass the law, that we cannot force them people to change their way of thinking, so it's best left at state level. We need to concentrate on Waterloo's problems. We just got done talking about, we saved $100,000 on a bladder, okay? So maybe that should be put someplace else. but not just doing something that we have no control over. What says that Evansdale or any City Falls or somebody doesn't apply to these regulations? And we do, so it ruins us because the wind blows across here. This is totally ineffective. There's no way that we can do this law and make it work. Thank you.
All right, anyone else from the audience?
David Dryer, 3145 West 4th Street. John kind of reiterated or touched on what I wanted to ask is, how much is this going to cost the citizens of Waterloo when you guys mandate certain requirements that, okay, I can only drive my car once a week, or I got to buy an electric car? And actually, when you look into the cost of building a battery and the contamination involved in building an electric car battery, there's more contamination involved in that particular area of the country that they build that battery than it takes to drive an SUV for a year on regular gas. Volcanic eruptions contribute to this. And there's volcanic eruptions all over the world every year. They contaminate the atmosphere. Nobody pays any attention to that because, oh, that's a natural thing. And they happen all the time. One thing in here was on going deeper into the computer was talking about flooding, wildfires and flooding and extreme temperatures. We get what happens to Waterloo as a flood, and I'll point at Cedar Falls. They just raised the dike 2 more feet. That water's going to go somewhere. Mother Nature's going to take it where it's going to go, and wherever it can go is where it will go. We got the crap out of that, didn't we? So all these things are years down the road. Don't make us pay for, just as John said, the rest of the communities around us aren't going to do it. Ban the box, we're finding out a repercussion on that one. Go ahead and do it and let the citizens pay for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to chime in? All right, to council discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Greider.
So I want to iterate a couple things. Number one, this is not a newspaper. This is a piece of, I'm going to put this politely, garbage that was founded by a white supremacist who does not believe that the Holocaust happened and who is widely known for spreading anti-Semitic messages. So it bothers me deeply that someone would pass this along to our city council as something with science. I'm going to read a quote. In the first place, there is general scientific agreement that the more likely manner in which mankind is influencing climate change is through carbon dioxide release from the burning of fossil fuels. A doubling of carbon dioxide is estimated to be capable of increasing average global temperatures by 1 to 3 degrees Celsius. Dr. James Black, 1977, employer, ExxonMobil Oil Company. The greenhouse effect is not likely to cause substantial climate change until the average global temperature rises at least 1 degree Celsius above today's levels. There is concern among scientific groups that once the effects are measurable, they might not be reversible, and little could be done to correct them in the short term. ExxonMobil, 1982, report on global warming. In 2019, the calendar year that just ended, global temperatures had risen an average of 1.1 degrees Celsius from 1982. This is a year that witnessed massive wildfires in California and Australia, a year which saw unprecedented flooding in Iowa, Italy, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, and Canada. A year which witnessed larger and deadlier hurricanes that impacted the American South and the East, the Caribbean, and typhoons impacting China, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia. A year which witnessed a Texas-sized sheet of ice never forming in the Arctic and massive ice melts in the Antarctic. A year which witnessed billions in costs due to climate change and tens of millions being negatively impacted. Climate change is here, and we are living with it. Now, some have suggested that if we look at certain dates in the past and look at recent dates now and compare temperatures, that those past dates are warmer. and therefore climate change isn't happening. I will repeat my comments from last week that second page Google searches, bothsides.com, and random data points picking is not science. What I am talking about is real, quantifiable studies that can be replicated and are peer-reviewed by people with an understanding of the Earth, the climate, and their interaction. And the science is clear. The 6 hottest recorded years on this planet were the last 6, and the hottest 10 have been within the last 15 years. In my lifetime, the global temperatures have risen 0.75 degrees Celsius. Now, some have suggested that the science is off, that models are incorrect, that we can't trust computer models. Well, according to a 2019 study by Dr. Zeke Hausfather of UC Berkeley, Drs. Henry Drake and Tristan Abbott of MIT, and Dr. Gavin Schmidt of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, they examined 17 climate models used between 1970 and 2007. 14 of those 17 models were spot on with what actually happened, with 2 of them being within a statistical deviation of normal. What that means is that 16 out of the 17 studies got fairly close or exactly on what the temperatures were over that period of time. And what is even more astounding about these numbers is that they are from older, less sophisticated models that have been replaced by newer ones. And they still hit the right mark. It is clear from the science that the planet's climate is changing. Now, we heard last week that there's not a scientific consensus that the 7% figure is made up or the result of one study. That is simply untrue. In 2016, a study by doctors John Cook, J. Stuart Carlton, Ed Maybach, Bart Verhagen, William Andrade, Peter Dorn, and Naomi Oreskes found that 97% scientific consensus on human-driven climate change in a review of over 12,000 scientific peer-reviewed studies of climate change published between 1991 and 2011. In 2004, Dr. Oreskes found 100% agreement with the statement of human-driven climate change in a peer review of study of climate change papers between 1993 and 2003. In 2009, Dr. Duran surveyed 3,145 scientists, finding 97.5% agreement. In 2010, Dr. Andrade found the same percentage as did Dr. Cook in 2013 and Dr. Carlton in 2015. These numbers are also backed up by NASA, which last week we celebrated a membership of our community in 2003, 2005, 2011, 2013, and 2019, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 1991, 1995, 2004, 2011, and 2017. So it's clear that science agrees on this issue and that scientists agree on this issue. Human beings are causing and accelerating climate change above normal levels. Now, some have also suggested that I'm in the pocket of big energy efficiency, that by adopting this climate action plan, I will somehow be reaping the financial benefits. I will not. Will some companies reach a financial benefit because they work in energy efficiency? Absolutely, because that's how markets work in a capitalist society, which I believe we are proud to be a member of. Those companies that adapt to changing needs of their consumers do well, and that's Economics 101, which I teach. However, what the insinuation most likely was is that green companies would somehow illicitly gain profit from what we know is happening. That cannot be possible because the science is clear. We know that the planet's climate is changing. But what is clear is that there are companies who are already profiteering from misinformation, falsities, and outright lies. For example, ExxonMobil, which has known about climate change since 1977 in its public record and stated again in 1982 to its stockholders that we have a clear problem facing the planet. However, they knowingly paid for false science and pushed aggressively for the denial of climate change science. And what did they gain? Well, in 2018, the last year of available financial records, ExxonMobil made $20.8 billion in profit. Their total profits between 2018 and 2008 never dipped below $7 billion, and at their highest point hit $45 billion, all while Americans were paying higher average gasoline prices than ever before, also while climate was changing. We should also note that it's not just ExxonMobil that's profiteering. It's big oil that made $1.7 trillion in the last 2 decades of the 21st century, all while spending a combined $200 billion to deny climate change to our elected officials. So yes, someone is knowingly profiteering off this, and it's big oil, to the detriment and the well-being of all of our consumers and the environment. I understand that people are angry, that they are frustrated, and that they are anxious. I have received all sorts of phone calls and emails and letters castigating me for seeking to outlaw cars or the consumption of beef or for pushing a world socialist agenda. I'm angry too. I'm angry at being lied to by companies that have reaped billions in profit, paying for politician and snake oil salesmen to muddy the waters on an issue that all while the planet in which I live, in which I am raising a child, in which I am teaching 1,600 kids a day is degrading. I'm frustrated that we are the only major nation that denies that this is happening, in part thanks to the profiteering and buying of our political class. And I am anxious about the world in which my daughter will inherit will be warmer, it will be less stable, and it will be less livable than the one in which we are all born. So I share your feelings, if not their root cause. But I am also hopeful. I am hopeful because this resolution, which does none of the things that I have been accused of, sets us on a path forward. A path towards making the planet a more livable by lowering our carbon footprint, a path towards greater savings for taxpayers in terms of energy efficiency, lower insurance costs, and well-designed public utilities. A path towards greater sustainability by investing in alternative modes of transportation, not as a forced choice, but as an option openly and freely and equitably accessible for all. I am hopeful that with this resolution, we here in Waterloo will help do our part towards making this planet that we call home a better place for all of our children and grandchildren, because the cost has already been incurred, and my generation, and my children's generation, and my grandchildren's generation will already be paying it. So let us start now.
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
I would like to, first of all, commend Councilman Grader for his eloquence and what he just said and for the information that he gave, which was pretty overwhelming. So thank you, Councilman Grader. But I would also like to, I have something that I want to add to that. I want to make a friendly amendment to part of this. But I know that there's probably people on council that want to respond to or talk about this resolution overall. So would it be more is it most appropriate to ask for this friendly amendment now or wait until everybody's talked about this, or do they want to hear what my friendly amendment is?
I'm more than willing to second the gentleman from Ward 3's amendment.
Okay.
We'll let him read what it is first.
Well, okay, all of what I want to do is I want to add, if you look at the resolution itself, when it comes down, after the whereases, when it comes down to the action items, I'd just like to add a 4A, and I can give this to you, Kelly, that says that the city of Waterloo resolves that the stakeholders, which are referred to in number 4, that the stakeholders, the mayor or designee, and at least one but no more than 3 council persons convene at least quarterly working conferences to develop plans for the implementation of these targets. And is that
second.
acceptable?
Can you read that one more time, please? I think
Want
I-
me just, I'll just give it to you, Kelly.
But can I read it? No.
Yes, I printed it, Kelly.
Ooh, you did. Thank you, Mr. Morrissey.
Plan, okay. Plan. Mr. Mayor?
We need to talk about the amendment first.
Yeah. But okay, just the amendment?
Yeah, that's what's on
Okay,
this.
okay, okay.
So we can approve the addition of the amendment, and then we can vote on the full
Ordinance.
resolution. And so the amendment is that the city of Waterloo resolves that stakeholders, the mayor or designee. The city of Waterloo resolves that stakeholders, the mayor or designee, and at least one, but no more than 3 council persons convene at least quarterly working conferences to develop plans for the implementation of these targets. So that is the friendly amendment. Can we vote on that, Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Jewin,
Yes.
Mr. Bozen,
Yes.
Mr. Amos.
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mrs. Klein,
No.
Mr. Foyce.
Yes.
Mr. Greider.
Yes.
So now we're back to the main motion
Madam Chair,
with that addition.
would it be okay to take a recess of 5 minutes?
Nope. Mrs. Yeah.
Doing.
All right. We got a 5-minute recess. Any seconds?
Make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
Seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're in recess. If folks are out there, could we please come back in so we can meet and finish up the people's business and get out of here? All right, can someone open us back up?
Motion to reconvene?
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are reconvened. Right now, Mrs. Jewin, you have questions on 6.
Yeah, my question was on putting together the plan, and I believe there are some plans already underway.
Yes, so to answer the Councilwoman at Large's question, so this will actually not cost us anything to create this plan because the Center for Energy and Environmental Education at UNI has reached out to Waterloo and about 5 other cities, and they have a grant which will allow them to pay for their staff that will help us. So they'll be working with city staff, so what it will cost us is time. And then they will come up with the plan throughout the year. And then, because there is not actually a plan yet with recommendations, and then those recommendations will come either at the end of this calendar year or right at the beginning of next calendar year. Back to us for discussion and voting and figuring out a priority. So there is actually not currently an action plan. This is calling for that, and the CEEE has stepped up to help us with that implementation.
So just to add, so what I would probably say, Senator Giddens had reached out to the city, and I believe Greg Alheim, we had to have some documentation completed this past Friday just for actual interest. I've asked Mr. Greider, and we thank him for his passion, to also be our council liaison and help walk city staff through this process. They will assign a AmeriCorps volunteer. It's very intensive, the amount of staff time it will take. But I would probably ask until that plan is actually completed, Mr. Greider, if you could update the council maybe once every couple months about exactly where we're at in that process. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that there's more to this if they had a chance to look at the attachment that explains Jonathan's, the whereas, the laying out of why he wants the action statements there, and then he has those 6 action statements that are the resolution, and it's not on the printed section. You'd have to go to the website, and you'd have to click on it and lay attachments and then read it.
Well, I have one question before I go to Mrs. Klein. So the idea, because I'd asked Senator Giddens at the time, is there some type of joint proclamation? If there is, can we revisit that so we can at least be consistent with the 5 other communities that we'll have a proclamation at the end
Yeah, I
of
can,
this?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Mrs. Klein?
First, I would like to commend my colleague, Mr. Greider. I think he shows great passion for what he's interested in, and he's done his research. I would admonish everyone out there that we really need to remember to be respectful and to listen with a very caring ear on these subjects that are so controversial. We need to also understand that no one up here is a scientist at all. And so what we are doing is we look things up. We check our facts. You can find facts for and against, and you know what? You should all go out and do that. Don't just, take things that you hear from another person. Go look this up. It'll do good for you. It will educate you, and we'll all be better for that.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
All right, number 7.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
number 7 is an ordinance amending the City of Waterloo City Code by repealing Title V, Police Regulations, Chapter 3, Human Rights, Section 15, Unfair Use of Criminal Record in Hiring Decisions, 5315, in its entirety, and rescinding ordinance number 5522.
All right, that motion has been made.
Mayor.
Is there a second?
I'm
A second.
counting on your better angels to win, and I hope that they do.
Is there
And
a
I do
s-
have one
It
rebuttal.
can't be brought
I'm not
until
gonna
there's
talk
a
about
second to discuss it. That's what's on the floor right now, your motion, Mrs. Klein. Is there a second?
I remember when
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second, anyone? All right,
When Mr.
the
Morrissey
motion
was
fails.
talking about that case he spoke of, you let him talk and talk and talk at this
The
point.
motion
of order, Mr.
fails
Mayor.
due to a second. All right, number 8.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Foyce.
I'd like to make a motion, like to make a motion to receive, file, consider, and pass for the first time an ordinance amending the City of Waterloo 2008 Traffic Code by deleting subsection 2 and subsection 16 of section 273, no parking, and inserting in lieu thereof a new subsection 2 and subsection 16 to section 273, no parking.
Second.
The motion's been made with the second. Is there anyone that would like to discuss this item? Council? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to make a motion to consider and pass for the second and third times and adopt said ordinance.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to receive, file, consider, and pass for the first time an ordinance amending the City of Waterloo 2008 Traffic Code by deleting section 286, parking for certain purposes prohibited, and inserting in lieu thereof a new section 286, parking for certain purposes prohibited.
Second.
The motion has been made with the second. Is there anyone that'd like to comment on this particular item? Council? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to consider and pass for the second and third times and adopt said ordinance.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. Madam Clerk?
Mrs. Jewin?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
No.
Mr. Foyce?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Could someone take number 10?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Number 10 is a motion to approve change order number 1 to ECCO Midwest, Inc. for a net increase of $8,000 in conjunction with additional asbestos removal for property located at 1100 Grant Avenue, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Noel?
Noel Anderson, Community Planning Development Director. This is for the removal of asbestos out of 1100 Grant. Because of the structural concerns of the building back when they bid it out, we actually had a walkthrough. When the 7 bidders actually went through the walkthrough, it was discovered that there was about 6 feet of water in the basement, so they were unable to bid that at that time. So they're coming back now with a change order to add in the basement. The majority of asbestos is in the basement of the building because it's the pipe wrap around the ductwork. You also note in the change order that there's also a change for some roof work. Again, because we've had to wait to get back into the basement and have it drained and all that, there's been some structural failure of the roof, so they'll be using a crane to get in there and do that work.
All right, thank you. I think we're all anxious for this one. Council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Number 11.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve change order number 2 to J.F. Brennan Company Incorporated for a net decrease of $93,000 in conjunction with the fiscal year 2020 Cedar River Bladder Dam repairs, contract number 996, and authorize mayor and city clerk to execute said document.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. Jamie?
Jamie Knutson, city engineer. Just to let council know, the original bid by JF Brennan was $388,000. With this change order, we will be lowering the total cost by $168,000. So it's gonna come in right around $220,000. And I wanna make sure that I give my thanks to AECom and JF Brennan, because without them, this decrease wouldn't be possible. They worked really hard to make sure that they brought the cost down, and we actually got to inspect the entire dam, which wasn't part of the original contract. So it was a very good project. So.
And I thank council too, and I wanted to thank you for, regardless of the criticism, unfair criticism you received, you knew you had to get this done, and we got it done, so I want to thank you as well. Did we vote on this?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
We jumped on that.